Hey there, it's Rory. I'm going to show you how to diagnose and fix flickering, dim, or unlit LEDs on a KitchenAid, Whirlpool, or Maytag French door bottom mount refrigerator. You might be experiencing this issue if there's a faulty LED light module, a loose connection within the lighting circuit, or a bad LED power supply. Stick with us so you can find out what's going wrong and how to fix it. With over 2 million products in stock and the know-how to help you do it yourself, we are AppliancePartsPros.com. Today we'll be using a multimeter, a putty knife, a small flathead screwdriver, wire cutters, pliers, and a jumper wire. You'll also need some tape for the testing process and a 1/4-inch nut driver or socket and ratchet. Ready? Let's get started. First, we need to find out exactly what's going on with the lights. These units have different series or strings of LEDs, which means that one particular LED is in line or on the same circuit as multiple other LEDs, while another LED may be in a different series or circuit. If you have several lights that are dim, flickering, or completely out, that means one or more of those LEDs has failed. While it's uncommon for multiple LEDs to go out in multiple series at the same time, it can still happen. If all of the LEDs in your unit are dim or flickering, there's a very simple test called power cycling that you can perform. Simply unplug the refrigerator, wait about 30 seconds, plug it back in, and check your lights. If the lights are no longer flickering for a short time after the power has been cycled, then there's an issue with the LED power supply, which will need to be replaced. But if cycling the power doesn't seem to change how the LEDs are acting, then we'll need to do some checks of the LEDs themselves. If all of your LEDs are out, make sure that everything else seems to be working. Check that the ice and water are dispensing and that the unit is cooling properly. If you're having other issues with the unit not dispensing or not cooling, then you may have door switch or control issues. If you're experiencing an LED issue where only some are dim or flickering, if not completely out, and others are working fine, then look for an LED module that seems to be completely out. There will usually be one that has failed to the point it won't light up at all. You'll want to check for a completely dark LED in a series by looking in both the freezer and refrigerator sections, since some series will have modules in both sections. To test or access the LED, first unplug the unit. Then open the door or doors in the section where the LED is. Remove any food items or shelves that are in the way so you can access the faulty LED. Then use a putty knife to remove the LED module. Carefully work the blade of the putty knife under the lip of the module and pry it out a little bit. Do the same on each side of the LED until you can work the module free. Try not to pull on the wires when removing the module, since they may come out of the connector and you don't want them to move back into the foam insulation. Once you have the module out, disconnect it if possible. If the wires come out of the connector, you'll need to secure those wires with tape to keep them from sliding back into the cabinet. The LED will need to be replaced if the wires come out of the connector, but the new LED module comes with a solution, so don't worry. You'll need to take your jumper wire and place it in the connector coming from the unit, or twist the wires from the unit together if they came out of the connector. Now plug the unit back in and see if the other lights that were dim or flickering are now working at full brightness. You might have to repeat this test for each LED in the series if they're all dim or flickering and none of them are fully out. But once you jump out an LED and find that the others are coming on correctly, you'll know which needs to be replaced. Some of these styles of French door refrigerators use the main control board for the LED power supply, but others have an individual board just for the interior LEDs, like the one we're looking at here. If your unit uses the main control as its LED power supply and none of the LEDs are working, but all other functions are good, then the main control will need to be replaced. But if your unit is like this one, then you'll need to access and test the LED power supply board. First, you'll need to disconnect the unit from power and remove the control cover on the back of the unit. To do this, you'll need to use a 1/4-inch socket with a ratchet or a 1/4-inch nut driver to take off the control lid. On models that have a separate LED board, the board you'll be looking for is always the one at the bottom in the control enclosure. Again, these units can differ from model to model. Some will use boards that are receiving incoming DC voltage, while others, like this one, will be getting AC voltage. Before we test voltage, remember that extreme care should always be taken to protect against electrical shock, which could potentially result in serious injury. Please do not test live voltage if you are uncomfortable doing so. First, you'll need to disconnect the harness that carries the incoming voltage before plugging the fridge back in. Then find the board using the incoming DC voltage. They'll have a 4-pin 3-wire connection, usually blue, yellow, and black wires. Now you can set your multimeter to read DC voltage and use the probes to test voltage from blue to black on the harness coming into the board. The board should have about 13 volts DC at all times while the unit is plugged in. If your LED board uses AC voltage, look for a 2-pin, 2-wire connector, usually with yellow and white wires. You'll need to open at least one of the doors after the unit has been reconnected to power. While testing from yellow to white on the harness coming to this board, we should be getting around 120 volts AC on these wires. In either case, regardless of whether this power supply is DC or AC voltage, if you have incoming power and all other functions seem to be working, but none of the LEDs inside of the unit are working, then the LED power supply will need to be replaced.
Now go ahead and unplug the unit.
Then use a putty knife to remove the LED module. Carefully work the blade of the putty knife under the lip of the module and pry it out a little bit. Do the same on each side of the LED until you can work the module free. Try not to pull on the wires when removing the module, since they may come out of the connector and you don't want them to move back into the foam insulation. Once you have the module out, disconnect it if possible. If you found out that the LED module is bad, you'll need to swap it out for a new one. Here's the old LED module and here's the new one. If you've already got one, great. If not, you can pick one up at appliancepartspros.com. If you can, connect the harness to the new LED module. Don't worry if the wires from the unit came out of the connector to the old LED module or if the wires from the unit seem too short. These LED modules come with connectors for just this problem. If the wires came out of the connector on your old module or the wires from the unit seem too short to reach, take your wire cutters and snip the connector off of the new LED module as close to the connector as possible. Now, this is a dioded load, so correct polarity or flow of electricity is important here. You'll need your unit's tech sheet or wiring diagram to make sure you're connecting the wires from the unit in the correct manner. Otherwise, the LED won't work. The new modules will all have red and black wires. Red is the incoming side and black is the outgoing. Cut only one of the wires going to the old module as close to the module as possible. Then place the wire from the unit and the correct wire from the new module in the connector holes and use pliers to push the connector blade down to make a connection. Then close the flap on the connector. Repeat this process with the other wires. Once you get those connected, you can turn the unit back on to make sure the LEDs are working. If they aren't, you may need to switch those wire connections we just made. Once the LEDs are working properly, you can place the LED module back in its opening, carefully feeding the harness back into the cabinet, then firmly press it back into place until it's flush with the liner or cover. You made it. Thanks for watching. Once you've found the faulty part, whether it's a module or something else, grab your model number and head on over to appliancepartspros.com to order a replacement, which should arrive in just a few days. After you get your new part, we'll walk you through the installation process with our video guides. Share your repair experience with us by leaving a comment below. And if this video helped you, hit the like and subscribe buttons to see more videos like this.